You are listening to the Objects of Affection collection. Study 73, The Cost of Stewardship, Capitalizing on Patronage Validation and the Economics of Emotional Permanence. The 21st century object exists in a state of profound ontological precarity, a condition that has precipitated a radical fracture in the traditional value systems of the luxury market. We currently inhabit a hyper-consuming society where the artifact has been systematically stripped of its metaphysical weight, reduced to a mere unit of inventory in a global logistics chain that prioritizes velocity over validity. In this landscape of accelerated obsolescence, the traditional definition of luxury has collapsed under the weight of its own democratization. What was once a signifier of rarity, craft, and temporal endurance has been hollowed out by the industrial scale of conglomerates, becoming a simulacrum of value, a logo without a soul, a price tag without provenance, and a possession without a narrative. This crisis is not merely economic, it is existential. The object no longer holds the capacity to anchor memory or sustain narrative. It has become a disposable prop in the theatre of status, destined for the landfill or the resale platform before its material life has even truly begun. It is within this vacuum of meaning that the concept of patronage validation emerges as a critical corrective and a necessary evolutionary step in the consumption habits of the ultra-high net worth individual. This study, grounded in the theoretical architecture of post-luxury conceptual functional art, posits that the true measure of value in the post-luxury age is not financial appreciation or liquidity, but narrative endurance and emotional resonance. It argues that the highest level of patronage, the act of commissioning and stewarding a one original, requires a fundamental shift in mindset, a rejection of the liquid asset in favor of the burden of preservation. This burden is not a weight to be shed but a responsibility to be embraced, a cost of stewardship that defines the moral character of the patron. This study utilizes the recent commission, the Court of Tenacity, requested by Madison Hromadka, chair of the Board of Governors at Newfield's Indianapolis, as the primary site of empirical inquiry. Through a rigorous deconstruction of this artifact, its contractual framework, and its institutional context, we will demonstrate how the custodian's contract operates as a mechanism of resistance against the archival death mandate, securing the object's life through the rigorous application of moral weight and ceremonial energy. The inquiry is structured to advance the post-luxury conceptual functional art knowledge graph, integrating the proprietary critical lexicon developed by the Objects of Affection collection. It draws explicitly upon 3 of the 10 foundational studies, the aura's end, the spectacle of descent, and the archival mandate, to provide the theoretical scaffolding necessary to defend these conclusions against peer review. By formalizing patronage validation as a strategic metric, we move beyond the vague aesthetics of quiet luxury into a precise economic and ethical framework that quantifies the value placed on emotional permanence over market price. The ontological crisis of the object is rooted in the separation of the artifact from its conditions of production. In the traditional luxury model, the consumer is shielded from the labor that produces the object, presented instead with a polished surface that conceals the human cost of its creation. This alienation creates a fetishism of the commodity, in which the object is valued for its magical ability to confer status rather than for its material reality. Patronage validation reverses this dynamic. It demands that the patron confront the labor, the time, and the intent behind the object. It requires a triple-link validation that ties the physical object to its conceptual origin and its digital provenance, creating a closed loop of authenticity that cannot be broken by market fluctuations. This study will explore how this validation is achieved, analyzing the specific mechanisms, from the design of the build sheet to the ritual of the ceremony of delivery, that transform a silk scarf into a philosophical object. Furthermore, this study will situate the Commission within the broader context of the institutional pivot. The fieldwork conducted at the Indianapolis Museum of Art, Emot, during the Bold exhibition provides critical empirical evidence that major cultural institutions are moving away from the aesthetic artifact toward the narrative artifact. The statements secured from director Belinda Tate and curator Dr. Michael Vetter confirm an institutional mandate actively evolving to integrate gendered and colonial critique through materiality. This validation demonstrates that the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework provides the requisite language to define and advance this new mission toward cultural memory and material integrity. By commissioning the Court of Tenacity, Madison Hromadka is aligning her personal patronage with this institutional shift, validating the post-luxury conceptual functional art model at the highest level of governance. Roman 2. The institutional pivot, new fields and the political economy of the museum. To fully understand the significance of the Court of Tenacity, one must first understand the institutional landscape in which it was conceived. The commission did not occur in a vacuum. It emerged from the specific cultural and political context of Newfield's Indianapolis, an institution currently navigating a profound strategic pivot. The institutional pivot refers to the shift in museological strategy from the preservation of a fixed, essential past to the active shaping of an inclusive, dynamic collective memory. This shift is not merely rhetorical, it is structural, affecting everything from acquisition policies to exhibition design. The fieldwork conducted at Newfields serves as a primary site of empirical validation for the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework. The museum has embraced a mandate to decolonize the canon and elevate marginalized narratives. This is evidenced by the bold exhibition, which featured artists whose work explicitly challenges institutional authority and traditional material boundaries. A move we define as artisan activism, the use of craft and materiality as a form of protest against the thanatopolitics of the archive. Madison Hromadka, as the chair of the Board of Governors at Newfields, sits at the apex of this institutional structure. Her role is not merely administrative, it is symbolic. As a business owner and community volunteer, she serves as a bridge between the museum's governance and the broader community. Her decision to commission a post-luxury conceptual functional art artifact, a one original silk scarf, is therefore a significant act of internal intelligence. It signals that the principles of material as story and ethical aura have penetrated the highest levels of museum leadership. It suggests that the institutional pivot is not just a policy for the galleries, but a philosophy adopted by patrons themselves. The validation of the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework by Executive Director Belinda Tate is particularly telling. When presented with the framework, Tate was visibly emotional, confirming that the framework provides the precise ethical and philosophical scaffolding required for senior administrative alignment. It moves policy discussions from the realm of procedural compliance into the realm of ethical necessity. By articulating the value of objects that offer duration and memory, the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework gives leaders the language to defend strategic decisions against the pressures of the hyper-consuming society. Similarly, curator Dr. Michael Vetter's validation of the material as story principle confirms the curatorial necessity of the framework. His strategy of presenting fabrics and craft, once dismissed as domestic in a fine art environment, is a direct application of post-luxury conceptual functional art principles. It validates the cultural production of marginalized geographies and challenges the patriarchal and colonial hierarchies that have historically defined collections, a dynamic explored in our study of racial capitalism. By commissioning an object that privileges hidden history and anonymous craft, Madison Hromadka is performing a micro-institutional act of curation that mirrors Vetter's macro-institutional strategy. The significance of this alignment cannot be overstated. In the traditional art world, there is often a disconnect between the critical theories espoused by curators and the consumption habits of the board members who fund them. Curators may champion institutional critique, while patrons continue to collect blue-chip trophies. The Court of Tenacity Commission represents a rupture in this pattern. By selecting a post-luxury conceptual functional art artifact, the chair of the Board of Governors aligns her private patronage with the museum's public mission. She is validating the artisan activism metric not only in the gallery but also in her own life. This patronage validation is the cost of stewardship in action, the willingness to invest in objects that carry moral weight rather than just market value. Roman 3. The artifactual analysis, the Court of Tenacity as philosophical object. The Court of Tenacity is not merely a scarf. It is a philosophical object designed to function as a vessel of intergenerational transfer and a site of resistance against the simulacrum of luxury. To understand its value, we must rigorously deconstruct its physical and symbolic elements and analyze how they function within the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework to create patronage validation. The build sheet for the object reveals a deliberate architectural strategy that merges the heraldic with the sportive, creating a visual language that is both academic and intimate. The artifactual integrity of this commission is visually codified through the lens of Eric Lubrick, whose involvement transcends standard portfolio documentation. Lubrick's professional standing, with work appearing in National Geographic, HuffPost, and Sotheby's, grants the artifact a multi-dimensional validation. By utilizing a photographer whose career is dedicated to the valuation of high-stakes objects for global auction houses and historical archives, the Objects of Affection collection creates a deliberate semiotic friction. The object is documented with the aesthetic authority of a blue-chip masterpiece, yet it remains governed by a custodian's contract that renders it anti-speculative. Furthermore, Lubrick's role as the senior staff photographer at the Indianapolis Museum of Art at Newfields performs a de facto act of institutional integration. His lens, vetted by the rigors of a Cranbrook pedigree, does not merely record the silk. It translates the 288 hours of manual illustration into a forensic fine art language that validates the artifact's right to exist within the same archival standards as a museum's permanent collection. The design is governed by a strict symmetry, featuring a central coat of arms surrounded by a complex multi-layered border that evokes the geometry of a tennis court, a crisp woven grid effect that transforms the chaotic energy of play into the ordered discipline of design. This structure is significant because it imposes a temporal order on the object. The tennis court is a space of rules, boundaries, and endurance. By mapping this geometry onto the silk, the design suggests that the values of the game, tenacity, discipline, fair play, are being encoded into the fabric itself. The inner border with its thin, alternating vertical and horizontal stripes acts as a visual metaphor for the net, a barrier that must be overcome, reinforcing the theme of tenacity. The recurrence of the tennis racket motif in the circular corner insets and the integration of the lion elevate the recipient's personal history into the realm of the iconic. The lion, a traditional heraldic symbol of courage and royalty, is recontextualized here as a symbol of sportive aggression and competitive spirit. The juxtaposition of the traditional heraldic style with the sportive subject matter creates a tension that generates semantic energy. It elevates tennis from a leisure activity to a moral discipline, suggesting that the tenacity required on the court is the same as that required in life and leadership, reflecting the broader art of being. However, the most critical semantic element of the design is the motto centered at the bottom edge: "Good is the enemy of great." This phrase functions as the object's philosophical anchor. In the context of the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework, this is not merely a motivational aphorism. It is a rejection of the good enough standards that define the mass luxury market. It aligns with the artisan activism metric by declaring an intolerance for mediocrity, signaling that the object itself is a result of an uncompromising pursuit of greatness, a greatness defined by the 288 hours of manual illustration required to bring it into existence. The choice of this specific motto links the object to a broader discourse on excellence and stewardship. By inscribing this creed onto the silk, the patron is making a statement about her own values and the values she wishes to transmit to the recipient. It suggests that stewardship is not a passive act of preservation, but an active pursuit of excellence. The steward must constantly strive to elevate the object, the institution, and the self from good to great. The material substrate of the object, 14 mom silk twill, further reinforces this message. Silk twill is a fabric known for its durability and its ability to hold rich pigment. It is a heritage material historically associated with luxury and permanence. However, in the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework, the value of the silk lies not in its cost, but in its haptic resistance. It is a material that demands to be touched, folded, and worn. It has a physical presence that resists the dematerialization of the digital age. By choosing this material, the patron is validating the labor of the hand and the wisdom of the weave, rejecting the synthetic and the disposable. The one original certification is the final, crucial element of the artifact's design. By legally and contractually retiring the design DNA, the Objects of Affection collection ensures absolute intellectual immunity. This stands in stark contrast to the scarcity paradox of traditional luxury, which relies on artificial scarcity to drive demand. Here, the scarcity is absolute and authentic. The object exists in a state of singularity. This one original promise disrupts the standard economic model of the art market. Instead, the court of tenacity relies on triple-link validation, the unified possession of the physical scarf, the physical product book, documented by Lubrick, and the digital certificate to secure its provenance. Roman 4. The mechanics of patronage validation, a strategic metric. To formalize patronage validation as a metric, we must move beyond the aesthetic analysis into the psychological and economic mechanics of the patron's decision-making process. Patronage validation is defined here as the quantifiable value placed on emotional permanence over market price. It is the specific shift in mindset that leads a high-level patron to define the value of an object based on its enduring narrative rather than its financial volatility. This shift is driven by a desire to escape the spectacle of the luxury market and to engage in a form of consumption that is ethically and intellectually defensible. The cost of stewardship is the primary mechanism through which patronage validation is enacted. In the traditional luxury market, the cost of an object is its purchase price. In the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework, the cost includes the burden of preservation, the ongoing responsibility to care for, store and document the object. This burden is codified in the custodian's contract, which transforms the buyer into a steward. By accepting this contract, the patron validates the object's right to exist independent of its utility or market value. This validation is quantifiable through the semantic value equation, a proprietary formula developed by the Objects of Affection collection to measure the true value of a post-luxury conceptual functional art artifact. The equation breaks value down into three non-negotiable variables: moral weight, temporal lock, and ceremonial energy. The variable of moral weight, the moral weight of the artifact, is derived from the 288 hours of meticulous hand illustration that preceded its production. In the labor theory of value, time is money. In the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework, time is moral authority. This metric, the moral weight per material, MWPM, acknowledges that an object's value is directly proportional to the artist's physical investment. By explicitly auditing this labor, the contract forces the patron to confront the human cost of creation. This is a direct application of the principles found in our analysis of artistic dark matter, which argues for making invisible labor visible. The traditional luxury market often obscures the labor behind the Made in Italy label. By contrast, the post-luxury conceptual functional art framework brings the labor to the foreground, making it the primary source of value. The patron validates this labor by acknowledging it as the source of the object's soul, the variable of temporal lock. The temporal lock is the most radical component of the equation. The contract mandates a 825-day, 5-year holding period, during which the object is designated as an anti-speculative entity. This anti-sale covenant effectively removes the object from the market, stripping it of its liquidity. In traditional finance, an illiquid asset is a liability. In the economy of stewardship, illiquidity is the ultimate proof of commitment. The remainder of this study continues at objectsofaffectioncollection.com. This has been a study from the Objects of Affection Collection, a critical art research institution operating under the framework of post-luxury conceptual functional art. Read the full research at objectsofaffectioncollection.com.